Hey folks, welcome back to What's the Dilly-o, the podcast where we sit down with the people rebuilding financial infrastructure one workflow at a time. Today I have with me AJ Asver. AJ, handing it over to you. Tell me about you and what you're building at Parcha.
Hey, Kanishka, good to see you, and thanks for getting me on the podcast. I'm AJ, co-founder and CEO of Parcha. We provide AI agents for banks and fintechs to automate their compliance processes. We have companies like Airwallex, Pipe, Flutterwave, IG, based out of Europe. We are integrated with Alloy, and a lot of their customers use us as well. And really, a lot of the times, these fintechs, they come to us because they're experiencing some challenges with how fast they can scale their compliance team to meet their growth. And when compliance becomes a bottleneck, it can really slow down the business. And so our AI agents help accelerate a lot of the manual workflows in that area, especially when it comes to kind of KYC and KYB.
Very cool. When I was doing the research on you, I kind of dug into your LinkedIn a little bit and saw you started a few companies, right? But I think one of the more interesting ones was a music discovery uh, platform. Like, tell me more about that. Like, how did you end up from there to compliance? Because that's a very interesting kind of pivot.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's funny because when you look at my career, like, okay, there's all these different things, but I think
Yeah.
the through line generally is that it's usually about trying to get and aggregate this data that's available across the internet and organize it for a particular audience to make it useful to them. So my first startup was in real-time search. We built like the first ever search engine on top of Twitter that was basically a lot better than Twitter's search, which at the time was kind of like a grep search,
Yeah.
where we would actually rank all of the kind of outputs. We would give you all the photos, the images, the links that were being shared. That got acquired by Google, but then after 3.5 years at Google, I was like, okay, I'm done with this. It's a really good experience of like doing product at a really large company. I learned a lot from it. Got to work on some really cool stuff like Google Photos, like Android hardware. And when I left, I was like, man, I got to scratch this itch. I really love music.
Yeah.
I had been DJing for a while, and I just wanted to build something in the music space. And I feel like a lot of founders and CEOs go through this weird itch where they're like, they want to become a DJ or they want to become a music producer or do something in this space. I would like to say I got there a bit earlier. This was like back in 2013, 2014. I know it's like very in vogue now. And I was like, well, what is the problem I always have as a DJ? And my problem was like, how do I find the best next track to play? Like when I'm
Yeah.
setting up my playlist for, when I have a gig coming up, like I want to find the best tracks. And oftentimes I would go look at what other DJs were playing and
Mhm.
see, okay, what is the track they're playing next, right? After a track that I already know. And I realized, well, look, there's all this information is freely available on the internet. There's like DJ playlists for like every major DJ. What if we could just aggregate it all and create essentially a recommendation algorithm? And that's what ended up being this company called Kato. We ran it for a few years. We had hundreds of DJs subscribe to it and using it. It was a really fun passion project, but I will
Yeah.
say that like starting a startup in the music space is just really hard to make successful. And the number one feature request we got from our customers was, can you just license the music for us for free? But as soon as we kind of looked down that path, we realized that would completely turn it from a zero marginal cost business to a very expensive business
That's
to
in
run.
business.
So we ran it for a while, decided to shut it down. And then I started exploring crypto, and that's how I ended up at Coinbase. And that's how I ended up working on fintech and compliance. And so you're like, okay, how does this all connect together? Well, the thing is, right now, a lot of what we do is still very much the same thing as I did my first startup, the real-time search engine, and even in the music startup, which is we organize a lot of disparate open source information. But in
Mhm.
this case, the way we do it at Parcha is it's about customer due diligence, right? So if you're onboarding a business and you want to know, is this business high risk? What kind of products and services does this business have? Who is the business owners? What countries do they operate in? All of that is open source intelligence gathering from various different integrations from the public web, and we organize it using our AI agents into an output that's useful for a compliance team. And so,
Mhm.
trying to draw the through line, but generally it's about organizing this like
Yeah.
open source information from lots of different integrations and making it useful for an end customer.
Tell me about your time at Coinbase because I'm assuming that their compliance is has been kind of opaque over time, right? Because crypto is just such a different beast than just traditional finance to kind of figure out the compliance piece of things there must have been pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things, obviously, about Coinbase that they're known for is they're the most compliant crypto
Mhm.
platform,
Yeah.
right? And so one thing that Brian has done always from the beginning is he's built the company with this idea that we're going to work with the regulators, not against them. And in the long arc of time in crypto, that has born to be a really, really good strategy because they are
Yeah.
now by far the biggest, exchange in the US and globally. They're highly regarded as kind of the leader in the cryptocurrency space, and they're absolutely crushing it, right? Um, but with that comes the actual challenges of like how do you build a compliant cryptocurrency exchange? And
Yeah.
when I joined Coinbase, I had zero experience in fintech. I had worked in like consumer product at Google, on like a search engine, and so like week one, I get introduced to the compliance team, and I'm like, oh my god, this is like not something I have any idea about. How do I even
Yeah.
navigate this? It's so different. All these different stakeholders. And we had this interesting challenge at Coinbase at the time where customers wanted to buy crypto. This was in like the end of 2017, beginning of 2018. We're kind of in the middle of a bull run, and they had to wait like 5 days for their ACH transfer to clear. So back then,
Yeah.
you started the transfer, you waited five
Yeah.
days, and then once the money was in Coinbase, then you could make a purchase. Why is that? Well, because a very common fraud pattern was that you would steal a fraudster would steal a bank account, then use it to transfer the money into Coinbase, and then turn it into Bitcoin, and then send the Bitcoin, and then it's gone forever.
Yeah.
Like literally nothing you can do, and then Coinbase is kind of on the hook, right? Because it's fraud that was done on that platform, and so to solve that at the time they had this kind of 5 day delay, this like grace period before the funds settled. But this was a horrible experience for customers because when a customer comes in and they want to buy a Bitcoin today and the price is volatile, it's constantly changing, they don't want to have to
Yeah.
wait 5 days, right?
Mhm.
So we had to work out with our bank partners and also working closely with our fraud team, machine learning models, how to essentially instantly allow someone to buy Bitcoin even before the funds settle using ACH.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of challenges with doing this. One, like the banks don't want to take the risk, the partner banks. They had very strict limits on like how much you could trade before you had to provide your ID, before you had to carry out like a pretty strenuous KYC process, and all of that kind of created friction. But we want to make it really easy to come in and get your deposit done up to 25K and then buy crypto immediately. So we
Mhm.
devised this really cool solution. And it really helped me learn the ins and outs of fraud and compliance, which is that you could instantly deposit and purchase the Bitcoin, but you couldn't withdraw it. And to
Yeah.
withdraw it, you had to provide your ID because that's what the
Yeah.
banks care about, right? And then the withdrawal period would be dependent on your fraud risk. And so
Yeah.
that innovation allowed us to increase, I think it was like 40% higher net revenue from new customers. It was like an 8 to 10% overall gain across the customer base, which, in today's Coinbase revenue is like could amount to like billions of dollars over the course of many years, right? And so it was a huge impact on the business, but more importantly, it was a massive impact on customers. They could come in and immediately trade, and the reality is, many of those customers they just want to buy, sell crypto easily. They didn't necessarily want to move it off the platform back then. This was before Web3. There wasn't really
Mhm.
an opportunity to do a lot outside of Coinbase for many of like the kind of everyday customers, not the more advanced crypto customers. So it solved a lot of their pain points.
Got it. Got it. And then right from there, you jump into Brex. You jump from one unicorn to the next
Yeah.
big thing, and goes more into like the business space. Like how difficult was that kind of transition for you?
Well, it was an interesting one. So I think when I was at Coinbase, that's where I kind of fell in love with fintech, and I
Yeah.
started to realize like I could pull these levers, and like fraud and compliance and like AI, and use all these different tools to essentially have a pretty big impact on the business. That wasn't like an obvious, like necessarily like customer facing new feature. And it turns out there's like very few people at the time that knew that space really, really well. And my manager at the time, who was leading the consumer part of Coinbase, he ended up becoming the chief product officer at Brex. His name is
Mhm.
Zach Abrams. He went on to found Bridge,
Yeah.
obviously really well-known stablecoin company recently acquired by Stripe. And he asked me to come over and help them kind of build out their platform team at
Yeah.
Brex. And actually, it started out me working on card rewards, and then eventually became me running the platform team. And that's where I met my co-founder from at Parcha, Miguel.
Got it. So that takes us very naturally into Parcha, where you've kind of built compliance at Coinbase, you've built compliance products at Brex, but what really made this click for you that this is a universal need?
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to that kind of experience at Brex, really. So I joined Brex, and we have this big push we're doing to launch this new kind of like cash management product. So it was kind of like not a bank account, but it can act like a bank account. It's for founders, startups to go in, deposit the cash that they just got from their investors, and then be able to spend that. So instead of just being a credit card product, we were expanding into kind of bank account replacement, essentially.
Hmm.
And as part of that, it then had a lot more risk. There's ACH risk now involved. There's like different types of fraud vectors. And we were expanding at the time pretty aggressively into the small business market. And so what we started to see was that as we were onboarding all these customers that really wanted to use Brex, especially outside of kind of the venture-backed ecosystem, where these customers haven't been underwritten by a VC already, right? So you're
Hmm.
taking the risk of whether they're a legitimate business.
Yeah.
We saw compliance become a really big bottleneck. And by
Yeah.
that, I mean, like you had to carry out all these enhanced due diligence reviews to understand the nature of these businesses, know who they are. But doing that work was bottlenecked on how fast we could scale that compliance team. At one point, the whole company was helping carry out the very basic analysis of businesses for a week so we could clear out this like massive queue of businesses. And I just remember thinking about this and being like, man, there's got to be a better way to solve this problem. And at the
Yeah.
time, we kind of were limited to rules-based systems and machine learning models. And the
Hmm.
challenge with machine learning models is they're not a great solution for compliance because they don't have great explainability. It's like really hard to explain features coming out of a machine learning model to a regulator. Whereas when
Hmm.
you're trying to manage fraud, you're really trying to optimize for essentially kind of net loss target or a kind of net revenue target. And machine learning models are very good at that. But the compliance side is much not really as great a fit. And so
Yeah.
that's why traditionally AI has been something that compliance folks have been more kind of anxious about and unsure about because of that explainability, right? You don't want a black box solution.
Hmm.
And so after leaving Brex kind of sat with me, this problem, this challenge that we faced. And when ChatGPT launched, I actually started by just at the time I was thinking about what I wanted to do next. I just started writing about
Hmm.
AI and about the space and opportunities,
Yep.
mostly for my own kind of edification for me to understand the space. And it was through that I kind of started to see there's an obvious opportunity to build a vertical AI startup in a regulated space where you have where there's limited understanding of the problem space, but you could go and apply AI in an interesting way. And then it became obvious that like this problem we had with enhanced due diligence with KYB could be a good fit for AI and agentic AI in particular, because you could now get an explainable answer for how you came up with how you risk rate a business, for example. You could step by step kind of carry out an operating procedure that a compliance person might carry out to explain exactly how you got to a decision. And I was able to persuade my previous engineering partner at Brex, Miguel, to come join me as a co-founder for Parcha. And that's really what seeded it. And our first few customers we spoke to were just like, yeah, this is a painful problem. It's a hair on fire
Yeah.
problem for us. Can you help us solve it?
Yeah. Got it. You're where we were 4 years ago with ChatGPT and everyone just like chatting into one little interface, and then we kind of transitioned into co-pilots and now into AI agents. Talk to me a little bit about that kind of transitionary period. Like, what makes agents more capable now than 4 years ago when, everyone was just like all in on ChatGPT?
Yeah, I mean, I think our first idea actually was much more of like a co-pilot slash chat experience to kind of help compliance folks kind of navigate how to carry out these reviews or navigate the regulatory ecosystem. But we realized very quickly as we talked to customers that the bigger pain point was actually how do you accelerate the work itself. And so
Mhm.
we started experimenting with AI agents very early. Like our
Mhm.
first AI agent ran on top of, I think, Claude 1.5. So this was
Okay.
like 2023. And we found that generally the fully autonomous agents were super unreliable. You could give them a set of tools and ask them to carry out a set of steps, but they would rarely do it in the right order. The errors would compound. And so we made the decision kind of very early in the company that we would essentially have this pre-orchestrated AI agent where you'd pick all the steps it would run. All
Mhm.
of those steps would use AI. So, for example, scanning a business's website to work out what kind of products or services it provides,
Mhm.
determining what industry it's in, identifying what countries it operates in. We'd use AI for all those steps, but it wouldn't be a fully autonomous agent. That was in 2023. And around that time, I think most people were approaching it the same way. You could see very early that, like, outside of kind of the customer support interactive use cases, when you're trying to complete a workflow that has many complex steps, having a pre orchestrated agent made a lot of sense. I think we've come a long way since then. I would say, like, today, some of the best agent harnesses are able to kind of carry out agentic workflows more autonomously. And even we're kind of looking at how we upgrade our system to be able to carry out more autonomous workflows as well. But what's surprising is that that pre-orchestrated workflow has taken us a long way. Because if you think about it from a compliance perspective, you want to carry out the same procedure in a very kind of reliable and
Mhm.
very repeatable way that you can defend to your regulators. And so having it pre-orchestrated work really well. But I would say now we're starting to see, like with things like Agent SDK and we've worked really closely with that team. We're starting to see more of that autonomous kind of agentic approach. But even coming back to that evolution, if you look at the launch that just happened yesterday,
Yeah.
which by OpenAI, it is very much a workflow tool, right? If you look at
Hmm.
it, it's not like you're just giving the agent a set of tools and saying, go off and carry out a process. It's very much kind of N8N style workflow tool. And I think that's what 90% of agents in the kind of B2B enterprise kind of workflow automation space are doing today.
Fair enough. I think one thing I'm always pretty curious about is because now we have these workflow tools that the research companies are launching, whether it's Anthropic or OpenAI, and then we have a bunch of vertical rules engines that are kind of incumbent in the market today, whether it's the Tactiles, Ocelars, those of the world. How does Parcha work with the tool sets? Because what you're truly providing is agentic talent, and they're providing the tool sets. Like, do you guys play well together, or is this more of like a one or the other situation?
Yeah, I mean, when we think about our ecosystem, the kind of KYB, KYC, kind of AML ecosystem, there's kind of like three layers to it. There's like the data layer. I would say that's the one that was built out a lot in kind of the 2000s, 2010s, the ID verification layer, giving you access to all these government databases, open banking. All of this kind of created more access to the data that allows you to carry out these processes. Then you've got these orchestration and workflow layers, right? The alloys, the tactiles, the kind of personas of the world. And I
Hmm.
think what they've done an amazing job of is connecting all this data together, potentially putting a machine learning model on top of it, right? And helping you make decisions. But we still see that up to like 50 to 100% of the time, those decisions end up in a manual review. And that's where our AI agents fit in. They can sit on top of these existing orchestration layers and they can carry out that manual review, do that due diligence to automate. And so a great example is a customer we work with, Pipe, right? So
Hmm.
Pipe came to us and they said, hey, we have these manual reviews that we still need to do. We use Alloy today, but there are a lot of times we need to do additional verifications in the business. Can your agents help? And our due diligence agents do additional research for the businesses they're onboarding for their underwriting process in the US. And we help essentially carry out that enhanced due diligence using our web research, using all the different integrations we're plugged into, so that they can fully automate what was a manual workflow before coming out of Alloy. How do we do that? We integrate with Alloy. And so customers using Alloy can send manual work to us, to
Yep.
Parcha agent, instead of having to send it to a human first. Now, they may still want a human to look at it before making the final decision, but in
Hmm.
a lot of the cases, we're going to save them up to 90% of the time it would have taken for the human to do that work because we've done all the work for them and they're essentially just reviewing that work and making a final decision. Now, in many cases, they might fully automate inside the Alloy workflow based on our agents. So I think, like, to answer your questions, we work really well with these existing orchestration layers. What we're trying to do is accelerate that human layer on top.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of how we fit in. Now, if you look at the AI workflow layer that's coming out from companies like OpenAI, I think we're going to see a lot of uptake from the prosumer kind of
Hmm.
category. And I'm sure they also have an enterprise team that are going deep into like the Fortune 500s and things. But when it comes to kind of the compliance area, I think
Hmm.
we've found that compliance teams really appreciate the expertise we have in the space and all the integrations we've built that are very specific to their use case. And they find that really helpful.
Very, very cool. I think compliance folks and risk folks just generally are naturally very suspicious of
Mhm.
any kind of new software that comes into
Yeah.
play. And what you're providing is a service that actually, to a degree, takes their hands off the keyboard, right? And presses the buttons, the approve or deny, whatever buttons. That requires a significant amount of trust building, right? Getting them to actually feel that this is a capable system. How do you kind of do that trust building exercise at Parcha today?
Yeah, I mean, it's evolved over time. I would say when we started out with our early design partners, it was literally like, hey, we're going to come in and solve this problem. Like
Yeah,
you're like hiring us as consultants, essentially. We're going to come
yeah.
and with your team. And a lot of the trust was built from like deeply understanding the use case, building the product with them, right?
Mhm.
And coming up with solutions for them. Like we work with one of the largest cryptocurrency companies in the world, and we came up with a solution for them that we ran through multiple testing phases, first with synthetic data, then with their own actual data, running multiple rounds of pilots. And it built all this trust that they helped to really understand, going through the model governance process, how the product works. So those long enterprise pilots were kind of how we did it to begin with. Those design partnerships evolved into pilots that we would then run. Today, we're taking a different approach. Now, for large enterprises, we still run pilots with them, but we have a fully self-serve platform where you can come in, and it's called Agent Hub. And a compliance can come in, they can configure an AI agent for a different compliance workflow, whether that's due diligence workflow or whether it's reviewing alerts from the AML screening alerts or verifying documents, and they can test it out of the box themselves. And so I might get off a call with a team that's excited to use our product, and then the same day they will come in and start running it. They'll start testing it out. And we found what's exciting about that is we build trust immediately with the team that actually uses it every day. So obviously with a large enterprise rollout, you might be mostly working with product and engineering, and compliance becomes like an approver and a user, but they don't get to use it until the whole integration is complete, right?
Hmm.
The new product compliance team come in, use it out of the box. They can upload a CSV with maybe 100 businesses they want to test with, and they can easily back test it. And that's really how we develop that trust, is to just show them how the product works. And then the second thing is we kind of have this approach to building product at Parcha, which is very much we call it kind of like peeling the onion, which is
Yeah.
that we give you the decision and recommendation up front on how we made a decision about a business. Like, is it high, medium, low risk? But you can peel the onion on every single step that the agent took. You can go as far as looking at the structured data, the outputs. Okay, we came up with this industry classification code, and this is why we identified it as high risk. And then you can go into the data itself. You can look at the audit logs of how the actual thinking process was done by the agent. And so you can dig as deep as you want to. And I think a big part of that is we want to build a trust that a customer can really understand and get to grips with how the AI did its job, so they can feel comfortable with it continuing to do that in a production environment.
Got it. The context piece of agentic building is, I think, paramount to everything else, right? How do how does something like Agent Hub allow companies to give the correct context to the agents? Because Brex is very different than Coinbase is very different than Pipe, right? How do you kind of consume that? How are they able to tune it?
Yeah, I think one of the things we've seen from talking to our customers is that the average compliance team is not interested in really doing prompt engineering, right?
Yeah.
Like, they have a operating procedure today. They want to be able to customize the agent for their use case, but prompt engineering is an art and a science, and we've
Yeah.
spent years at this point in R&D learning how to do it. You can't expect that a company out of the box is going to be able to do context engineering, as it's called now, or prompt engineering,
Yeah.
right? So what we do is we essentially provide this configuration layer on top of our agents with drop-down menus and toggles and different integrations you can add and different steps the agent can run. And you go in and you can customize that configuration. We have templates for all these different types of workflows, whether it's enhanced due diligence, KYB, AML screening. And compliance teams just come in, they tweak the settings, and that's it. So they don't have to worry about kind of the context engineering, the prompt engineering, and we give them the flexibility to provide all of their requirements, what their risk rating requirements, but we do it in a very structured and controlled way, that they're not going to end up kind of having an unintended consequence on the accuracy of the agent. And so that's kind of something that obviously for the larger customers we'll hold a hand and do, but with a self-serve customer can come in and very easily set it up. A lot of times our customers will just ask us, what are the sensible defaults for this, right? What is a sensible default for risk rating? And they might look at it and say, this looks pretty good to me, or I might add this additional criteria. But really the whole product is designed to make it as easy as possible to customize without you having to bring too much context engineering yourself.
Got it. So then, who is your general user? Who has their fingers in the pie the most? Is it at the analyst level, the manager level, director? Because ultimately we're all becoming AI managers in a way, right? Where do companies kind of inject their human talent?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a multi kind of stakeholder, multi-layer kind of process, right? Compliance, if you think about the different people involved, there's usually the chief compliance officer. He has to approve, or she has to approve whatever whatever the actual, kind of new tool is, right? And sometimes budget might come out of the department. But
Yep.
oftentimes at scale fintech or bank, there might be an operations team that actually apply the compliance procedures, that have the
Hmm.
analysts that do the work every day, right? And within that team, there's going to be operations managers for different types of workflows, and there's going to be actual on the ground users. And so what we find is we have to really have a product that caters to every one of those archetypes, as well as if you're doing an API integration with us, the product and engineering team too, right? So how that might work is that we would help a chief compliance officer understand how the product works at a high level and how they can customize the product, all the kind of model governance side of things. Then they would help an operations manager maybe set up an AI agent for a specific workflow. And then an analyst may use that AI agent and analyze the output every day and maybe add, inputs like different businesses they want to analyze, but they're not going to be the one changing the settings. And so we actually have a pretty broad set of like kind of user-based permissions for different layers of the system, of the org, and how they want to use the product. The day-to-day, everyday users that might look at the information are the analysts, but in order to get it in the hands of the analysts, you have to really work with all these other folks as well.
Got it. Do you, so one thing that's a different area that's been pretty noisy is GTM with Clay, right? And one of the most interesting things about Clay is that they've created this new category of GTM engineers who are coming in and their sole focus is understanding this piece of software and doing that. Do you envision a world where Parcha basically has Parcha admins similar to how SFDC has their like in-house admins for each individual company?
I think it could be a world like that. I think like we're actually kind of going through this transitionary period in AI right now, where you need this idea of like a GTM engineer, but I'm not sure if that's where the
Yeah,
the long term solution is. I mean, I would say like at Parcha, I'm the GTM engineer. I spend a lot of time in Clay working this stuff out, but I
yeah,
can't imagine, like the every go-to-market team is going to have that expertise, and now you even get these clay agencies, right? Clay
yeah,
agencies where they'll
mhm,
come in and do it for you, right? And so
yeah,
I think like the equivalent for us is, we work with companies like FS Vector, and they might bring a
mhm,
client to us, and then we educate them on how to use our product and how to help their clients. But I think as much as possible, I want to make Parcha so easy to use that you don't have to be a Parcha engineer or a Parcha
yeah,
like administrator. Like you can just come in and very easily kind of use it as a compliance team member. That's really important to us. We don't want it to feel too advanced. Like when I use Clay, like I built that muscle over like maybe say like 1.5 years.
mhm,
It's like a pretty steep learning curve for someone coming in. I definitely don't want that to be the experience with Parcha. I do think, however, though, as AI becomes more prevalent in our space and others, the folks that are analysts today will become managers of agents, essentially. They'll
mhm,
be managing a fleet of agents with different settings and different tools, different capabilities, and different kind of outputs. And they might be spending more time actually reviewing the outputs of those agents, making the final decision, or QAing those agents, or configuring and optimizing the accuracy of those agents, than actually doing the work themselves that they do today. But as much as possible, I think it would be great if that felt a lot more like managing people, because that's what
yeah,
we know how to do today, than feels like managing some really complex software that you have to kind of have like a certification in or something.
yeah.
I don't think that's like the good long term trajectory, and I hope that's not where we end up.
No, I completely agree. I think this should be as easy as my grandma being able to use Facebook,
Yeah.
then throwing her into a Salesforce instance and letting her kind of drown. Um, okay, you guys are probably onboarding people like crazy. What's the rollout playbook for a new institution? Like, how are they come in first day? What are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it varies depending on the size of the institution and kind of what they're looking for. We've had companies come in, they got on a call with me, they tested it out and immediately started using it the same day. And we've had other companies where, it might be like a year-long sales cycle. Those are like our large enterprise clients, the kind of logo flagship fintechs that, we have on our website, and more of those coming as well. So it really depends, but I would say in every case now, because of Agent Hub, they can actually test it out and start using it on day one. And that's
Yeah,
really important, right? Now, the sales process for an enterprise client may take many months because of all the stakeholders involved to actually get it
yeah,
to be approved. But the fact that the compliance team can come and test it afterwards is really impressive. Like we had a public company where I went to demo to them, based in San Francisco, well-known lending company. I demoed to their product manager and a few folks on the risk team. They want to try it out, and literally they started creating accounts that day. Like I'm literally closing my laptop, leaving their office, and I'm seeing
Yeah.
us like pinging as they start creating accounts. And they have all these questions that they want to know, and that's not going to be something where they're going to like plug in their credit card and run it, and like, yeah, set it up immediately. But the fact they can start testing it means that now we have a conversation started with them that might have taken months before, right? Before they could even start doing that. And so even with enterprise clients, we really love the fact that they can start using it straight away. So I think like I would say the most important thing is getting the customer in the product and using it straight away. And then of course there's all the process of like getting it in, turning it into a sale, right? Now for our self-serve customers, they can literally come in, put their credit card in. We had a large European fintech actually come in, and literally their sales operations team were doing KYB as they were onboarding businesses. And they came in, they liked the product and started using it. They put the credit card in, and just started subscribing. And so that's
Yeah.
like a great outcome for us. If we can get as many customers as possible doing that, that's huge, right? And that may have been a like months long sales process before.
Got it. Got it. One quick question before we wrap up. I saw you guys have like 20, 25 plus agents in there. You've really brought the workflows down to their
Yeah.
atomic kind of units, right? How do you decide which templates to build next?
Really good question. I think there's a few ways we think about it. The first thing is we try to think about what our existing customers need. So we talk to our customers and they will ask for a specific use case and an opportunity to expand an account, an opportunity to serve a new case we don't today, and we'll generally kind of focus on those. Another big way we think about it is like how do we take a template that exists today but kind of translate it to a different industry that's doing a similar workflow, right? And so a really interesting one that I've been spending time thinking about recently and talking to customers about is like large global law firms also need to carry out AML and due diligence on their clients, right? So how do we create a template for them that is similar to what a fintech might do, but is really geared toward their use case and speaks their language, right? And so we're always thinking about ways to widen the aperture of Parcha and how we can support more types of businesses. And generally, those are the kind of two vectors. Is like, how do we go deeper with an existing customer, or how do we broaden an existing use case so we can appeal to more types of industries and verticals? And that's where the kind of templates come from. But the templates are basically a composition of different compliance tools or checks, right? And so often what it comes down to is like, when do we add one of those new checks or capabilities? And there's a lot of different ways that we might decide that, but generally speaking, when we have a strong sense that more than one customer is going to use it, right? So if we know that like we've heard this like from like a few different customers, or we know kind of intuitively from our own experience, if we build this for this one customer, we know like there's going to be hundreds of other customers that will want to use this. That's generally when we'll add a new capability. And of course, when you add a new capability, then you can create new templates for agents that can use that capability.
Got it. And I'm assuming you guys are definitely tracking like capability adoption as well, right? Like where
Yeah, we look at kind of who's using what across our customer base.
okay. What's something you believe about the future of AI and compliance that most people would disagree with?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I think that today, when we look at the compliance space in general, the ecosystem, over 200 billion is spent globally on kind of financial crime compliance, and about 75% of that is actually human labor, right?
Mhm.
And so you might look at that and be like, okay, we're gonna suck all of that up and turn it into AI. I just don't think that's going to happen overnight, because
Mhm.
the reality is like regulators still want humans in the workflow, right? And so a lot of times, like an AI agent, even if it's doing compliance, is going to be supervised by a human. But I will say is there's a good chunk of that today that is outsourced to BPOs. And I think one
Mhm.
of the biggest risks that compliance teams face with BPOs is, one, if you're a fintech and you have PII and you're giving it to a BPO to carry out a workflow, so personally identifiable information, you don't have as much control over that information as if it's inside your system or inside a piece of software, right? And so that can create all kinds of challenges around security, around privacy. And so, you have to build a lot of trust with a BPO before you decide to use them. I think the second thing is just like, in the current climate, obviously, like offshoring jobs is not a great is not a
Yeah.
great kind of solution either. And I think like folks want to see more of those jobs, especially in the US, come back to the US. And then I think the third challenge with BPOs is that this business process offshoring is that there's a lot of churn. There's a lot of training that needs to be done. You need to go out to that country to train the team. When you change your policies, that team needs to change their policies as well. And so that can create a lot of overhead, right? Um, I see a world where pretty much all of that BPO work becomes AI agents, but then we have a lot of really talented people onshore, in the US for US fintech companies, obviously, but depends on where you're based, that are doing that agent kind of configuration, that agent supervision, and that agent kind of management. And so that will become a highly skilled workforce in the US that is, instead of kind of dealing with like BPOs across different time zones and like training and churn and concerns about privacy and security, is dealing with a piece of software that's doing that work. And that software is going to be based in that country, right? And so I think that's going to be a way that the space will evolve, and we definitely want to see that happen.
Makes perfect sense. I mean, and it keeps all of the dangerous stuff out of people's hands. It keeps it just in house on premise, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. And then obviously, if it's in software, it's a lot more easy to control. Our AI agents that are going out and doing this research are still in a very controlled sandbox environment, which is very different from if you're giving them to humans in a different country,
Yeah.
or a different office that isn't within your kind of like even physical security domain, right?
Yeah. The danger of leakage is almost eliminated at that point. Great. My last question is my signature question, which is, what's the Dilly-o with Parcha in 2025? What are you excited about? What are you building?
I think what we're excited about is continuing to push the boundaries in how quickly we can give customers access to our technology so they can use it really easily, right? If you think about many of the way people solve this today, we often talk to customers and they'll say, well, today our compliance team is Googling it. And I'm like,
Mhm.
literally, that's like what open source intelligence gathering today is basically using Google, right?
Mhm.
And I think like there's a lot of great things about Google, obviously, but there's a lot of challenges with it. I mean, 10 move links aren't the most useful way to solve a problem of trying to do deep research, right? And I think
Mhm.
we've solved deep research broadly across different domains, especially in the consumer space, obviously with ChatGPT, Perplexity, other types of deep research tools. But I don't think there's a really good solution for the customer base we look at. And I think what's really great about Google that makes it such an easy to use tool for our customers today is that they literally just go to google.com, type in what they're looking for, and get the answer. I think the closer we can get to be able to just serve that open source intelligence search that they want to do in the most low friction way as possible with our AI agents, I think the closer we're going to get to our customers, no matter where they are, and customers we don't have today as well. So that's always what we're thinking about. How do we make it as easy as possible for you to get in and start using Parcha, get to the answer you need to in we brought it from months to now hours. How do we bring it to seconds?
Sense. Awesome. AJ, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. I've been a big fan of Parcha since you guys launched. I wrote about it a year ago, and it's really been a lot of fun watching you guys progress from what was probably just one agent to like these 20 plus, this swarm of stuff, and very, very excited to see where you guys go from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the time, Kanishka. Really appreciate it, and look forward to chatting more as we evolve and build new things as well. So hopefully we can check back in and see how things go.
Absolutely. You're welcome back anytime.
Awesome. Thank you.